ago, I'd say 1987, I met a man at Unity Village named Harlan Oyer. He worked for the 24-hour prayer service Silent Unity. And he invited me over his place, and right near the door, he had a stack of silver dollars. And he said, "Justin, here, take this silver dollar and put it right up to your right eye and close your left." And he said, "What do you see?" I said, "Well, all I see is a silver dollar, Harlan." He said, "Right. When you hold your problems, your troubles too close, that's all you see." He said, "Move it a little further from your eye. Now what do you see, Justin?" "Well, I see more of your messy room, Harlan." He said, "That's right, Justin. The further you can move your problems, the things that are trouble you, away and start to see the bigger picture, the more you can put your life in perspective." And that's what we're talking about today, putting it all in perspective. I believe it's nearly 52% of the country voted for Donald Trump. And a lot of people who didn't vote for Trump, first of all, if you voted for Trump, congratulations, you guys won. And for those of you who didn't vote for Trump, there's a lot of sadness, disappointment, frustration, anger, outrage. And I admit, I felt sadness and disappointed myself. And, you know, there's a lot of people struggling with fear for the future. And I think it's important that we acknowledge what's coming up for us. And so my first point today is to use the election results as grist for the mill of your spiritual growth. Use the election results as grist for the mill for your spiritual growth. Here's the truth. You can't unhappen what happened. We can't unhappen the election results. They are what they are. Trying to unhappen something creates unhappiness. Resistance creates internal suffering. That's why the great master psychologist Jesus said, "Resist not evil." Resistance creates unhappiness. We can't unhappen what happened. I like what the late Ram Dass, who wrote Be Here Now, he said, use your problems, use the suffering, use whatever happens to go to God. Use it to go to God. Use it to wake up to the reality of who you are. You see, I believe our greatest purpose is to know God. I believe that's why we're here. It's not to make everything out here the way we want it to be, the way we think it ought to be. It really isn't. We're on an eternal journey to know God. And life is going to teach us that nothing outside of us is ever going to completely satisfy us. Because this world is always going to be up and down, up and down. Jesus said there will always be wars and rumors of war. And that's the reality of our life. And in order to know God, we've got to heal ourselves. We've got to unblock our stuff. And guess what? The election results bring up stuff, don't they? All the anger or sadness or frustration or outrage that comes up inside of us is just the tip of the iceberg. External stuff triggers our unhealed stuff. The dislike, even you could say hatred of Donald Trump that many people have, it's inside of us. It's not just about Donald Trump. It's about stuff that we've been burying for a lifetime, ladies and gentlemen. He just triggers it. So this election process and results and whatever's going to unfold in the future is an opportunity for you and me to heal ourselves, to feel what comes up instead of repressing it, which is what we've been doing all our lives, mostly, and what most people are doing, repressing, resisting what's there. Somebody says something, doesn't do something, and the average response is to blame, to shame, to try to manipulate, to try to control, to make it outside the way we need it to be so we're not afraid, so we're not uncomfortable, instead of looking directly at what's coming up for me and let me heal it. Let me allow myself to feel it. Let me allow it to flow through me. And boy, is this a time to be able to heal ourselves. We've got to use our willpower, ladies and gentlemen, to heal ourselves. You know, we can't let ourselves go down that train of letting the mind run away in blame and anger and frustration. We can't let ourselves run down that train of sadness and depression. We can use our will to go, wait a minute, I feel the sadness, I feel the anger, I feel it, but let me raise myself. Let me raise how much can I raise myself? How much can I lift my mind? Because I know letting myself go into that despair is not going to help anybody. It's not going to help me. It's not going to help anybody. And you know what? After this election, that may be too difficult for you to do. Maybe you need to practice with the little things, like the subway being late, like the subway stopping, like the bus being late, like someone cutting in front of us, like someone speaking sarcastically or whatever to us, to practice with the little things. Because unless we practice with the little things, we can't do it with the big things. This can be an opportunity for us to remember what is really most important, and that is knowing God, waking up spiritually, because ultimately that's the solution to the world's problems. It's not the government. It's not the outer. It's the inner. Yogananda had the goal of being even-minded and cheerful at all times. Doesn't mean you're necessarily happy, but it means I'm going to do my best to be cheerful at all times. When my stepfather, Henry, who I loved as much as I could love any human being on the planet, I wondered, how am I going to deal with it when he passes away? And when he passed away, I was so amazed by the calmness that I had. And I was strengthened by the idea that my sadness, sure, I had some sadness, but I didn't let myself go down a pit of sadness because I knew that was self-indulgent. It was natural to feel sad because I loved him, and it's natural to feel sad and angry and outraged by, if you were a Democrat or whatever, if you voted for Kamala Harris, and you feel sad and outraged, that's natural and that's normal. But we don't have to stay there. St. Teresa of Avila said, God alone is the only thing you ever need. And Donald Walters wrote a song based on her statement, God alone is all we need. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. Let's use the election results as grist for the mill for our spiritual growth. And then next, put contemporary times in perspective and remain hopeful. Put contemporary times in perspective and remain hopeful. I realize the possible results of what this election means for women's rights, for immigrants, for the gay community, for who knows, so many different areas. I realize in the world there is a movement toward autocracies. There's a movement toward that. I realize that. Let's put this in perspective and remain hopeful and recognize, first of all, this world is not meant to be perfect. It isn't. There's a legend that in the beginning, God created everybody perfect, and everybody got still and meditated and merged right back into God. And God said, wait a minute. That's no fun. Let me create a little more challenge out here. Let me create some temptation. Let me make this so we can keep the game going. And so he did. And it's not meant to be perfect. We're not meant to find perfection in the outer world. The sages tell us we're meant to find it in spirit, in ourselves. That's the only place we're ever going to find it. That's why we've got mosquitoes. That's why we got snakes. That's why we got all these other crazy things in the world, because it's not meant to keep us completely satisfied and happy. Let it drive us to grow spiritually. Let it drive us to wake up to our divinity. As I said, Jesus said there will be wars and rumors of war all the time. I happened to see on TikTok this meditation teacher, Dan Harris, who had learned recently from a friend who told him after the election, he told him, it's all part of it. And he was repeating that to himself. It's all part of it. It's all part of life. It's ups and downs. It's butterflies and it's rattlesnakes. It's all part of it. One of the things that's hopeful to me is something the sages talk about. They talk about cycles of time. That we left the dark ages of the Roman Empire and so on, and the very dense, the medieval times, where people are feeding each other the lions and all this kind of craziness. And now we're in an ascending cycle. Now this cycle is the age of energy, and we see it in cell phones, the internet, lasers, and all the stuff that's happening. We see this ascending energy that's happening, but they tell us also there's going to be a shake-up on the way. There's going to be big challenges on the way. And ladies and gentlemen, we might be on the verge of some of those big challenges on the way, but we're going to move through it. Because we're on this ascending cycle to where everyone is ultimately going to be like a sage, a Jesus Christ and so on. But we've got a long way to go. A long way to go. So for me, that's hopeful. And this is not the end. This is not we're just going down. No, we're not going down. We're going up. But there's a friction between this new energy and the old energy. There's a friction. And this is what's happening, and this makes it even more important why you and I need to grow strong in our center. This is why even more important, you and I need to heal ourselves and let our light shine. I have a friend who recently told me stuff was coming up for him from his past that he was healing from. Anybody else finding some stuff coming up inside of you? And I started having dreams myself of stuff from my mother, and really heavy dreams before the election results, where I would wake up and I'm like, my goodness, stuff about my past and childhood. And dreams are one way that we are healed of our stuff. We can't face them in our conscious life, so they come up in dreams where they get released because we're not able to look at them directly in our conscious life. So they come up, and I thought, wow, what's going on? And maybe what's going on is you and I are being healed so that we can move into this new phase of humanity, so that you and I can move into this new phase stronger and more enlightened, allowing the light to shine in us. Because if it's not needed now, it is needed more now than ever before. The book of Revelation in the New Testament was written during the rule of Rome, and it was a message to the Christians in a time of persecution. It was shrouded in symbology. And essentially what it was saying to the Christian was, hang on, God is coming. Hang on, God is coming. Now, God is coming in and through and as you. God is that purifying energy that you and I can tap into, that can lift our grief, that can lift our sadness, that can heal our anger, the rage, the confusion. God is that energy that can heal us from all those things that are holding us down. God is coming as we open to that presence within our own being. So let's put contemporary times in the perspective of the long term. We're on an upward cycle in humanity. We may not be able to see it right now, but these times are part of it. And I say, be hopeful, remain hopeful. Look in the long period. Live one day at a time. You know, there have been horrendous times in the past. Horrendous. All kinds of things that humanity has gone through. And there have been people who lived a spiritual life, a life of peace, a life of joy, and their life was good enough in those horrendous times. And you and I are called to live a peaceful awareness of God's presence within us in these times, and to realize that life can be good enough no matter what happens around us and in the world around us. Anxiety, fear of the future, is a result of looking to the future and worried about the future. That's where anxiety comes from. Whereas Jesus said, be not anxious about tomorrow. Be not anxious. One of his commands in the Bible, be not anxious. Which to me means live more and more in this present moment. There's an old saying, live in day-tight compartments. That you and I can handle anything 24 hours. We may not be able to, we look forward and go, gee, I don't know how I can get through the next year. I don't know how I'm going to get through the next 4 years. I don't know how I'm going to get through the next decade. Blah, blah, blah. It's too much. But any of us can get through the next 24 hours. Any of us can look at one day and go, I can get through this day with God. And that's what we're called to do, to live in day-tight compartments, 24-hour periods with Spirit. That doesn't mean you don't plan. That doesn't mean you don't plan and get ready and do what is necessary to prepare for the future. That doesn't mean you don't do that. Yeah, you do that, but we live every day and realize today is the day to live. Today is the best day of my life, as Emerson said. I'm going to live today as if it's the best day of my life. And that's a goal. So living one day at a time, and then keeping our hearts open. It's so easy to want to shut down the heart, not feel safe, retreat, close the heart. And we're called to keep our heart open, ladies and gentlemen, to love our friends and family. How's your family doing? How are your friends doing? To check in with our friends and family, to get our attention outside of ourselves and find out how are they doing? How are they feeling? How can we be present for them? Checking in with our loved ones. getting our attention off of ourselves and see how we can support our others. Developing, what did I just do? Well, that's why we have hard copies. Developing compassion and kindness for others. You know, I mean, one thing we can do is actually put ourselves in the shoes of others who we don't understand. Can we look beyond how others have voted in this election and try to put ourselves in their shoes as human beings to try to understand where they're coming from? You know, one thing I think to consider is that millions of people, even those who voted for Donald Trump, still share the values of kindness and compassion and honesty and integrity and goodness. Really. However, I know, I hear some chuckling. Really? Well, that's right. Everybody, think about this. Every person on the planet is an expression of God. The 52% that voted for Donald Trump, or whatever that percentage is, are all expressions of God. Right? They're all expressions. No more, no less than you and me.
Unity ministers and members are in that 52%. There's some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. She's saying, that's right. That's why I'm not taking any partisan side. If you were part of that 52%, as I said in the beginning, congratulations. This message is primarily, probably, for those who weren't in that 52%, who are struggling. And I'm not trying to take either side, either way. I'm just saying the truth as I understand it. And here's the thing. That 52% are expressions of God. And some of those 52%, I believe, voted out of fear. You know, at least some of them voted out of fear. I mean, we all have fear inside of us, let's face it, right? The 52%, the other percentage that didn't vote Trump also voted out of fear, some percentage of them, right? You know, I think fear motivated a lot of those votes. The cost of living, the wars going on in the world, the other dictators, and seeing this businessman who is, you know, has an image of a strong man. I spoke to one guy, I was like, he voted in advance. I'm like, why did you vote for Trump? And he's a father of 4 grown kids. He's a smart man. We had a very reasonable conversation about all this before the actual election results. And he said, I just want someone to be able to stand up to Putin. You know, I'm not saying Kamala couldn't. They don't hear me. I'm not taking sides. But what I am saying is that can we develop some understanding and compassion beyond the vote and try to see people as human beings and as spiritual beings, trying to put ourselves in their shoes to see what's going on. And here's a thought for you. As 52% voted for Trump, who's to say that he might be the right kind of crazy to deal with some of the crazies in the world around us? I don't know. We don't know. But 52% expressions of God voted for him. Maybe there's something going on we don't know. Right? So let's keep our hearts open, love our friends and family, develop compassion and kindness. The election results can be grist for the mill of our spiritual growth. We can put contemporary times in perspective, live one day at a time, keep our hearts open, and lastly, do what you can. I have a deep concern for the people who are going to be affected by this administration. I do. But we can do what we can. Nkosi Johnson was born in South Africa in 1989. He was born with HIV. He died at the age of 12. But during his life, he was an advocate for children. He was an advocate for AIDS awareness. And he said this, "Do all that you can with what you've been given in the place where you are, with the time that you have." A little boy with AIDS. That's what you and I can do. We can do what we can. We can support the causes that we believe in. I heard Dr. Rick Hansen talk about, he had a congressman he knew years ago who told him, he was like, how can we help? And that congressman said, send money to public interest legal firms that slow down bad things and maybe even prevent them. Interesting. What are the causes you believe in that you can support? And most importantly, grow spiritually. Let your light shine. Be a source of peace and calmness and love right in the world where you are. Because the sages tell us the ripples of your consciousness flow out in the pond of humanity and touch other souls right where they are. I'm going to conclude with Mother Teresa, attributed to Mother Teresa. She said, people are unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're successful, you'll win some false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you're honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others may destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Be good anyway. Give the best you have and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. For you see, in the end, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for your presence and activity within us. Thank you for your peace that heals us, that soothes us, that guides and directs us. Thank you for your strength and your courage. And we see all of our brothers and sisters all over the planet, all your children. And we see them filled with your light and your healing and your protection. We acknowledge your presence right where they are. That truly everyone is a spiritual being, whole and complete. That everyone is an eternal being. That their soul is eternal, immortal, incorruptible. Nothing can harm their spirit. Thank you for your peace. And so it is. Amen.